All right, so let's start today's episode with a bit of a debate, okay? Let's imagine that you want to convince a stranger to do something, okay? So for this example, let's just pretend that you've met a complete stranger just by simply walking down the street. And you want to convince that stranger to give to a charity of your choice. Now, how would you do that? Think about it for just a sec. How would you start convincing them to give to that charity? Typically, what would happen is you'd probably walk up to them, introduce yourself, and try to butter them up. Then you would introduce that charity and ask them to give it to you, right? Well, that's what most people would do. Or at least that's what I would have done 10 years ago. But my experience with running my own business has taught me that really that doesn't work. It works for some people, of course, but you won't get ahead with a lot of people with that particular strategy. And the reason why is simple. People have a limited range of things that they care about. Now, it may sound a little weird, but most people don't care about most things. And the next step in that logic is that people only put effort into things that they care about. So look at yourself for an example. The things you throw most of your effort into, your business, your health, your friends, your family, these are the things that you care about the most. So if you are talking to someone about doing something and you aren't showing them really why they should care about it, then really they just won't listen to you. It's not their business. Now, they may pretend that they're listening, but really it's just in one ear and out the other. It's not important enough for them to shift their other priorities simply because you, a complete stranger, open their mouth. Now, the problem is this. You won't convince anyone to do anything if you don't know what it is that they want or what it is that they care about. And how can you know that about someone if you don't even know them? So for you to be able to convince people to do something, you need to know them. And this is probably one of the very first lessons that you should ever learn if you want to be a successful business person, especially if you're trying to use social media to expand your business. Because social media or your accounts on social media, they're really like a foot-long megaphone that blasts out your message to thousands or even millions of people. So for you to convince this mass of people that you are worth listening to, you need to know what they care about. And you can only possibly know that if you know them, right? Now, this may seem complicated, but really it isn't. In this episode, what I'm going to do, I'm going to share with you and tell you the level of analysis that you actually need to bring into identifying the people that you know and that you want to talk to. Now, I'm also going to tell you what to do when you know them and how to use this knowledge to sell your products or your services in the online world. You ready for it? Okay, so let's talk first of all about why people would pay attention to you or a business in the first place. So typically, I find it's because one or maybe a combination of these three particular things. So the first one is that they are convinced that the service or product that they're getting can satisfy their need. The second is that they actually want to understand whether that good or service can solve a problem for them and get them ahead. Or third, they really just have nothing better to do with their money. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that one is the most common, but there definitely are people who just buy for the sake of buying. The people that you want to make up of the bulk of your clientele, though, are the people who see what value you're offering and are convinced that what you are offering is a solution to their problem. Now, the only way that you can convince these people that your business is the real deal is to know what they are looking for. And you can only know that by understanding their motivations, understanding what appeals to them, understanding what sort of messaging they would find interesting to follow, understanding the kind of aesthetics that they would want to, and know how they wish to actually be approached by people. So if you have a business and don't have a concrete idea of who you are targeting, basically you'd be using that 100-foot megaphone on social media to send mixed messages that may or may not be heard. And we don't want that to happen to you, especially with how much time and effort you put into social media. But now once you know the sort of people that you're looking to attract, you would be able to send them targeted messages, a message that really they would understand and relate. And once you understand what they want to hear and what you can say to convince them, you can put a message out that can be wildly effective for your business. And you can spin your business narrative in a way that attracts not only just random people, but the sort of people that you want to have within your business. Now, if you understand who you're talking to, your marketing wouldn't really just be a shot in the dark. It wouldn't just be random postings determined by how many views you can get. It would be this coherent messaging plan that you are so confident that will convert for you. You no longer have to actually obsess over comments, likes, and views because you know that this is exactly the sort of message that would attract the people who are most likely to work with you in your brand. Pretty cool, right? Okay, so now that you know why you should know who you're targeting, let's get down to the technical details of how to actually target them. So we call your dream client, or those who you want to attract through your marketing, a marketing persona, a buyer persona, an ideal customer avatar. This is what we call them in the marketing terms. But in short, what this is a fictional representation of the ideal client or target audience that you want to attract. And when you have a clear picture of who you're marketing to, it's much easier to develop effective, targeted content that really speaks to that ideal client's goals and challenges. So if you want to know your customers or your clients and connect with them online, you need to have or create an ideal customer avatar. This avatar, this persona, will be an average of all the attributes of all your potential or ideal customers and will help you understand how to market them. So if you don't know yet really who it is that you're talking to, take a second right now, okay? I want you to close your eyes and envision you got a phone call from a random number. Okay, so you answer the phone. Voila. It is your absolute dream client or customer who is literally begging to work with you. Who is that person for you? What do they look like, sound like? What do they need? How can you actually help them? When you can picture that one dream client or customer for you, the rest is seriously easy. So let's dive in a little bit deeper into how you can determine that dream person for you. So the first thing you need to do is really understand this person on a deep enough level to have a connection automatically is to learn about your current client base or customer base. So why? Well, they're actually spending money with you right now. They already are convinced by your messaging. So typically, what's going to happen is that you are most likely going to attract people very similar to your existing database. So what I would do is use your existing audience to kick off this process. So you'll want to start asking personal questions like what are their age, gender, household income, whether they live in an urban or rural area, what they do for fun, what motivates them, all of that fun stuff. But you're also going to want to ask questions which are more like work related or the education that they've achieved, what industry they actually work in, what part of the world they live in or work in, what are their biggest challenges, what they consider to be a success, and what are their overall goals. Now, the answers that you're going to get for these questions, they're going to vary, and you can really switch it up and add questions in based on your particular business. So for example, let's just say that you sell scented candles. You can ask them how often they use those candles, what they use them for, and all of that fun stuff. Really, the goal here is to use your existing audience to obtain as much research as possible on your audience. Now, you probably think this is not easy to go up to an individual customer and ask them these questions right off the bat. And with that one, I will agree with you. It's also very, very time consuming, and you shouldn't do this manually, especially if you have loads of clients and customers. Now, there are very easy ways to collect information. So you could create a simple survey. So using something called SurveyMonkey or Forms. Now, if you don't have the money for a paid app, you can just go to Google Forms. You can create a simple survey and send that out. So these apps will really, really make your job of collecting information a heck of a lot easier. Now, the next thing that you're going to need to do is segment your customers. So when you're starting to analyze the data that you've collected, you're probably going to start to see some patterns and some trends emerging. So what happens when you start to see those patterns? I want you to actually make note of them. No business only has one customer. But what we need to do is narrow in on who you are talking to based on each individual offer that you have. So when you see those patterns of people coming from the same mold and liking the same sort of things, let's say, I want you to segment them and ask yourself, do they fall into one offer that you have? Now, if you only see one pattern in the data, don't worry. Small to medium-sized business, typically they only have one type of dream customer. And in fact, that's almost better, if I can be honest with you, because really across the board with all your efforts in your business, you are talking to and helping one type of client. It's not something to worry about though, just be aware at this point. But once you've collected the data from your current database, I want you to think about everything that you've learned And based on those patterns and based on the segments that you've created, ask yourself these particular questions. What one lights you up the most? What segment is the most profitable for you? What segment actually has the longest customer journey? What segment do you want more clients of? And after that, you'll be able to create a buyer persona, an ideal client. Meaning you can create this fictional character that represents that one dream client in that segment for you. So this person needs to actually tell a story. You need to make this concrete. And with that persona, that's how you craft all of your messaging and all of your marketing to really appeal to that person. And with that, you'll start attracting more and more people just like that fictional character. So this persona or this fictional character will also help you nurture your leads efficiently, as you'd have a pretty good idea of what aspect your value proposition appeals to them the most, and you would be able to lean on that entirely. Now, this process can seem pretty hectic at times, and like I said before, really time consuming. But trust me, I know because I've done this way too many times to tell you. It's the very first thing that I do with any new client or any student that I have with any of my programs. The fact of the matter is this: if you have no idea who you're talking to, if you are trying to talk to everyone, you are actually going to talk to no one. You need to know how to talk to that dream client of who you want to attract and connect. So let me explain a little bit more before we end today's episode with an example of this and why it is so very important. So let's pretend for this example that I'm a yoga instructor, okay? And I own a yoga studio. When doing my marketing persona research, I've realized that I actually have 3 different types of people who come to my studio. Someone who's doing yoga for the very first time. People who's been doing it for a while, but they're really only coming once a week type of person. And then there's other yoga teacher training who are doing more advanced classes with us. So if I were in my studio right now and I had each person walk in, the conversation that I would have with each individual would be totally different. The person who's doing this for the very first time, I would give them more step-by-step approach, going over the basics of yoga. Versus the conversation I'd have with another yoga teacher, more advanced side, would be about the temperature of the room, maybe the different flows or the positions that we're going to be practicing that day. The conversations would be totally different in person, right? Which also means the conversation in the online world would also need to be completely different talking to those people. Now, after realizing this during my research, I really stepped back and I started to notice that I like to talk to the people who are complete beginners. I like to help them. That's what lights me up. So now when people come to my social media pages, what's going to happen is they're going to start to see more basic information from a beginner perspective. See what I did there? It is so very, very important, my friend. I cannot express how much you need to know who you are talking to in the online world. And the easiest way to figure it out is to craft a buyer persona and understand who your message is going out to. You will see a lot more success in the online world when you do this. I promise you that. Just picture that one dream client and pretend you're talking to them over and over again. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Comment below this episode. You can find me on social media at Lisa Ann Coaching, really on all social media platforms. But as always, friends, if you learned something new today, do me a favor. Like this episode, share it with those who might need it, and finally, subscribe to my channel for more content like this and really just be a part of this amazing entrepreneur community. My name is Lisa Ann. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you next week. Bye for now.